are some of the best understanders of soil fertility, okay? So I feel very good working with a lot of the agronomists and dealerships in this country. I feel good about the understanding that a lot of you have in major and micronutrient efficiency and nutrition in general. So I'm not going to get into these topics. I feel like these are quite well understood. Where I'm going to kick into gear today and try and help you, this is a weakness for a lot of you. Driving down from Gunnedah across to Gundawindi, down to Moree, Dubbo, Parks, Forbes, Wagga, down into Horsham with Andy Newell a couple of days ago, I'm going to suggest that the majority of the producers represented by the areas that I've visited are struggling with this topic right here, which is poor residue distribution. You're not able to spread residue evenly and consistently with a header at harvest time. And I'm going to give you some justification and some ideas and some strategies to help with this. There's not any silver bullets, but there's some things that you can do to help with this topic, okay? I guess all of the producers that I work with in the States, they've all been no-till for a minimum of 12 to 15 years. There are growers that come to me on the outer edges of the farmers that I work with that do a horrible job with residue management, okay? Totally unacceptable. And they'll come to me and they'll say, well, what seeder do I need to use or buy? I'm going to start no-tilling. And I'm going to tell them, man, you need to fix your residue. If you can't improve your standards of residue management, you're not going to be happy with no-till. So that's absolutely where it starts, okay? This was a good example. I was with Andy Newell the other day. Field of canola, obviously control traffic, which is obviously what I'm a huge advocate of also. But here you can see heavy bands of residue and light bands of residue and the effect of the plant health and the emergence of canola. I've got 30 or 50 similar examples in my laptop, just basically clearly illustrating the negative effects of poor residue distribution. So again, I can't overemphasize the importance of spreading residue evenly at harvest time. If you can't spread it evenly at harvest time, you're not going to be happy with the performance of no-till, okay? The second topic I'm going to be spending some time on this morning that I believe is very important for a lot of you is this topic right here that I call uneven emergence, okay? Depending on where you are, your moisture, there's lots of different reasons for different standards of uniformity, but this would be an example. Here we've got a wheat field, for example, and perhaps in a meter a row here we might have 50 plants. We move over to the next row, we might have 5 or 10. You know, these kind of stands are quite common from here to Gundawindi north. Guys, you're missing out. Basically, you need to be starting out with the kind of stands suitable for high yields. So if you get decent in-season rainfall, you can obviously capture the potential. If you start out with a poor stand, even in a season with good in-season rainfall, you're not going to be able to capture high yields, okay? So this is absolutely where it starts. Some of it's residue related with a combine. Some of it's seeder selection, the setting up of the seeder, the equipping of the seeder. All of the above and combinations are obviously required to try and get better standards. Because I want you guys to go out in your fields. You need to understand how many plants you need for maximum yields based upon variety, based upon seeding date, etc. Obviously, your potential and soils play into that. But I want you also to try and generate more consistent stands, okay? And I feel like that's one of your weaknesses right now. I mentioned earlier on the issue of wide row spacing. Some of you are not able to distribute seeds very well in these wider rows. So if you've got a hole on 15-inch rows, you've got a 30-inch square with very few heads at harvest time. So you're spending the money on seed, fertilizer, and chemical, but not getting any return. So when you go out there at harvest time, you're sitting in the combine looking down, you've got these holes that are producing absolutely nothing. Even in the years when you've got good in-season moisture or reasonable in-season moisture, you're losing out on yield. It's that simple, okay? So we're going to be spending time this morning trying to figure out why these occur, what we can do about them to get your yields back up and increase your profits, okay? The other weakness is, I think you guys are pretty well on board with regards to recognizing and controlling a lot of the diseases and insects. So if you can strengthen each link of the chain, if you care to speak, then you've got a potential, yield potential which is going to be here. That's obviously your goal. So without further ado, let's spend just a few minutes talking about this topic, as you see at the bottom of the screen, residue distribution at harvest time. Okay? This is a standard, this is a 50 series SDS machine. I believe this is a 10.6 meter front on it. This particular machine spreading residue about half the working width of the front. Okay? Not a good situation. Driving around, like I said earlier on, between here and Queensland, there are a lot of fields that don't have very good residue distribution. This might be a bad example. It's good for a presentation to show it. But the general trend in the industry is to go with wider fronts when a lot of the headers are not designed or not capable of spreading residue as wide as the fronts. Okay? So some of the things that you can do, give me a show of hands. How many of you using a John Deere STS machine? Quite a few. Okay? Some of the things that you can be thinking about with those I'll come to in just a minute. But basically, whatever brand of seeder, and I'm not going to be picking on different brands or types, I'm going to give you some suggestions based upon my experiences and travels, but whatever brand of seeder that you've got, whether it's a hoe drill or a disc machine, unless you can spread that residue evenly and consistently, it's evenly is one thing, consistently is another, across the working width, you're not going to be happy with the performance of any of the seeding equipment. And evenly and consistently are almost two separate presentations. Obviously, what you want to do is spread the residue evenly across the header width. John Deere on the website, they talk about power cast tailboards, which are an improvement I'll recognize. But they'll say on their website that they'll spread 50 feet. Okay? And they show some little videos, even on the website, showing wide spreader widths. But a lot of the material is thrown to the outer edges of the spread pattern, not much in the middle. Okay, so that might be spreading width, but that's not uniformity across the spread width. Your other challenge is bands and streaks, and I'll get into this in just a minute. The other challenge is these little, what I call wads, little pockets, perhaps caused by feeding the material into the header, perhaps caused by just clumping of material for whatever reason. It throws it out in little wads out onto the ground. So you've got these little tents of material that's going to be almost impossible to try and cut through. So then you're looking at different kinds of residue managers or maybe hoe drills to try and part it or at least move it out of the way. Okay? So another good example, and there's huge amounts of problems in the US. Okay? This is a field of corn planted into 35-foot front harvested soybean residue. When you go out there looking at plant counts, when you go out there looking at number of leaf stages on the corn, you start seeing differences as a result of where residue is present or not present. So it's a huge problem globally that needs to be addressed. I'm a huge fan of the red equipment. I know there's one of the sponsors here today is obviously a red dealer. This is an area I'm going to suggest they need to improve. The reason that I'm putting this slide up on the screen, this is actually a TV commercial. Not that I watch a lot of television. I've probably seen this commercial 5 or 10 times, okay? And it's on YouTube. If you want to look at it, the name of the video, you can search it under is Will You Be Ready? But they basically show this clip, of which I screen captioned and put into this presentation. But it basically shows 4 headers with probably 10.5 meter fronts, I'm going to guess. But they all appear to be spreading the residue about half to 2/3 the width of the front. So here you've got a national commercial. This is it's shown, I don't know how many times a day across the country, okay? And it just kind of shows me the understanding of some of the manufacturers from a point of view of the importance of spreading residue. Now, I've been to Harvester Works, John Deere's facility, the research facility at Silvis also, and I met with a lot of their engineers, a lot of their chopper design engineers. And one of the guys actually made the statement that 60% of the headers that leave Harvester Works, destined obviously for the US market, go to 4 states: Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, and Illinois. What do those 4 states have in common? Corn. What do those states also have in common? How much no-till is there in Minnesota? None. I'm not going to say very little, almost none. How much no-till is there in Iowa?